You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hi everyone, this is the Ask Annie podcast, Horse Girl reviews on products you use. This episode is brought to you by Spalding Labs. Easy, effective, and eco-friendly fly control starts with fly predators. Fly predators are the organic, natural way to dramatically minimize your fly problem. Learn more about fly predators and other Spalding Lab fly control solutions at spalding-labs.com. Ask Annie podcast listeners get 10% off their first order of fly predators when you use promo code ANNIE10. Again, that's 10% off and new customers only when you use Annie10 on the website or call and say you heard it on the Ask Annie podcast. Jessica Starcevich has been the company entomologist for Spalding Labs for over 12 years. In episode 71, I reviewed Spalding Labs' iconic product, Fly Predators, a pesticide-free solution to fly control. Head over to episode 71 to hear more about that review. Jessica, who has worked for Spalding Labs since 2011, received her bachelor's degree with a double majors in environmental science and biology and a minor in history from Illinois College, and then obtained her master's degree from the University of Minnesota in livestock entomology. She now resides in Bartonville, Illinois, just 20 minutes from her family's farm, and in her spare time, she enjoys taking pictures of insects. You could say insects are her work and her hobby. Thank you for joining me today, Jessica.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So first off, can you just give us a broad overview of what Spalding Labs is?
Sure. So Spalding Labs is primarily a biological control company. Our primary focus is the fly predators that, like you mentioned, and we kind of focus on that in an integrated pest management scenario. So although our products for biological control, we work closely with our customers to make sure that we're really taking a holistic approach to fly and pest management for them. So we're primarily biological control, but really focused on the IPM or the integrated pest management.
Yeah, and perfect segue into my next question, but Spalding focuses on IPM. What does IPM stand for and why is it so critical to fly control?
Sure. So I'll try to keep it somewhat summarized. It's kind of a long one. So IPM is integrated pest management. It looks at 4 primary types of control and pulls from each of those sources to make sure that no one thing becomes kind of obsolete. We want to make sure that each part of our package still has some power to it. So we look at the 4 main categories being cultural control, which is manure management, changing habitats, drying out manure so that it doesn't produce flies, or piling it and composting it so that it kills them. Any of those control methods that are just a way to change the environment, that's your cultural control. Biological control, like the fly predators, that's just introducing one live animal to cut down on the population of another. Mechanical control is where you're going to bring in a lot of your traps because they're not chemically based. So, whether it's a fly swatter or a fly trap, all of those are types of mechanical control. And then finally, the chemical control, which is any of your pesticides, repellents, kind of any kind of chemical product. And the biggest reason IPM is important is because for too long, we've relied really heavily on chemical control, specifically pesticides that kill pests. Because flies and other pests reproduce so rapidly, they can develop resistance to those chemical controls very quickly. So when you use an IPM program, it focuses on those 3 other parts of control where we can't get resistance. And then just using that chemical control as an absolute, if something's really bad, you can use it in a really targeted area to just bring something down, but you can really cut back on the amount of chemicals needed to maintain good overall control. So that's kind of the overview of integrated pest management. We're looking at using a lot of different methods to make sure that we get good overall control and reduce as much as possible the chemicals that we use to avoid any kind of resistance.
I like too how this approach really looks at the entire life cycle of a property too, or
yes,
of animal keeping, because you could just kill the insects at this 1 month with pesticides, but then they would come back stronger and worse potentially the next year and the next year. And so it seems like this is pretty
It is.
insightful.
And not only that, it also, another thing that it really helps with is to reduce what they call kind of indirect targets. So we all like, our butterflies, our bees, and all that kind of stuff. But also even within manure and ways to reduce flies, things like dung beetles help us a lot by reducing the amount of manure present and drying it out. But if we're using too many chemical controls or using too many, wormers that are detrimental to dung beetles or anything like that, then we're wiping out good bugs as well as bad. So with that IPM program, it's protecting all of those like non-target species that we want to keep and that we want to keep them going and not harm them as well.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of good bugs, what are fly predators?
Sure. So fly predators are a tiny insect. They're technically a type of parasitic wasp. They don't bite or sting, so they're not harmful in any way. If animals consume them, it's not going to hurt them, anything like that. They're considered what is called a parasitoid because part of their life cycle kills the fly pupa by laying eggs in it and killing it that way. And the other part is the adults will also feed on the fly pupa and kill them. So they're killing fly pupa in two different ways. And just to clarify, so flies go through a life cycle kind of like a butterfly. They lay an egg, you get a larva or a maggot. That'll turn into a cocoon or a fly pupa. And then an adult fly with wings comes out of that. So it's that same kind of stage. Fly predators are only attacking that pupal stage. So that's why these, aside from being a biological control, they're a preventative. That's when we bring in a lot of other IPM options to help bring down flies if someone already has a lot of flies, because since the fly predators are just killing those developing stages in that pupal stage, adult flies live about 30 days. So that's when we start bringing in those other pieces to help kind of bring that fly population down faster than the 30 to 45 days it would take with fly predators alone.
Oh, interesting. So what category do fly predators fall into in the IPM approach?
Those are going to be the biological control in the IPM approach. And they'll help with, any kind of primarily house flies and biting stable flies. They're very host specific, which means you don't have to worry about them harming any other insects. I know a popular insect for composting and things like that now are using the larvae of like black soldier flies. And even those are a fly, it's a common question we get whether the fly predators will hurt them. They won't, because the fly predators are very host specific on just a few types of filth flies, primarily, like I said, that house fly and biting stable fly, and they don't get anything else. So you can use them in conjunction with a lot of other types of insects or biocontrol that you might be using for other parts of your farm without any kind of detrimental effects to anything.
Wow. And so if if fly predators are targeting the type of fly, then it doesn't really matter what kind of livestock you have. It doesn't need to be just horses. So fly predators
Correct.
can work with other types of livestock?
They can work with anything, anything that is producing decaying organic matter that's going to breed houseflies and biting stable flies. So aside from, horses and any other kind of livestock, whether it's cattle or goats or anything like that, but we also do a lot of zoos, campgrounds, fairgrounds, food processing, like places that process a lot of walnuts and things like that, where the walnut shells are left over and that ends up breeding flies. And water treatment plants for like waste treatment and things like that. So any of those kinds of things that breed those two types of flies can use fly predators.
And so we've talked obviously a lot about fly predators, but what other products does Spalding Labs offer?
Sure. So of the products that are our own, we have the fly predators, which are a biological control component. We also have our bye-bye odor, which is a microbial odor eliminator. It actually can kind of fall into a cultural control because by spraying that, you can reduce the ammonia and kind of the manure smells that are bringing flies in. Then we also have our bye-bye insects, which is an essential oil-based repellent. So the nice thing about that, it doesn't kill flies, so we don't have to worry so much about resistance, but it can be used on your animals or on your person or your kids as, just a topical repellent for flies, mosquitoes, and ticks. Those are our kind of main products. We also offer a handful of other products. We resell the traps made by Starbar as mechanical control. So we use some sticky traps and odor traps. What kind of trap works best for any individual person? That's where we really encourage them to give us a call so we can kind of talk over their situation, figure out what kind of flies they have, where they're coming from, and then based on that, we can recommend what traps might be useful if they need them at all, any other manure management strategies that we would suggest, and that sort of thing. And then we also carry mosquito torpedoes, which are it's a treatment that you can use in livestock tanks or other small bodies of water to prevent mosquito larvae from developing.
Wow, yeah, really all encompassing. And I like
Yeah.
that you brought up the customized approach, and by giving you guys a call, that's how listeners can do that. But can you go over the custom pest management plan and what these plans entail?
Sure. So usually what I do, I start out by just kind of talking to the customer about the fly, what they're seeing, what kind of behaviors they're seeing. We all think of flies as just flies, but at any given time, there could be over 200 species of flies in your yard alone. Of those 200 species, there's probably only one or two that's causing you any kind of annoyance or bugging you in any way. The rest of them are just there doing their part in the environment. A lot of them are pollinators and things like that. So we'll start by kind of talking to people, getting an idea of what kind of flies they have. We'll ask questions about the behavior of the flies, what they look like, have them send us some pictures if they can. Once we identify what flies are causing a problem, then we'll pull up usually like a satellite view of the person's property and ask them to kind of walk us through where their animals are, what kind of materials they're seeing there. Because once we know the fly, we know kind of where to look, where they're likely to be breeding. So then once we get an idea of that, we'll kind of mark up the map for the person and send that to them to just say, here's some places where we recommend putting fly predators. This is likely where you're getting fly, this kind of fly from, or this one. And so we'll go over that really carefully with them, make sure that we're getting all the right stuff in the right places. If there's flies that are coming from someplace that's outside the person's control, then we might recommend using some traps along the perimeter to intercept flies coming across. Or if there's a place breeding flies that they can't get to spread fly predators, we might recommend traps in a certain area there. And again, that's where we want to, it's really important to get a really good program to call and talk to one of our fly control experts. We're all based here in the US. So you're going to get someone that, right here in the US, almost all of us have horses and other livestock of our own as well. And it's kind of through walking through all those areas, taking a look at their property, having them send pictures, making sure we know what insects are a problem. And then what we do for them is say, okay, this is what we'd recommend for the number of fly predators, how often to get them, where to put them. If we do recommend any supplemental traps because of other stuff going on, we'll recommend which types of traps would be best and where best to place them. And if there's, anything else going on that is either something that we can't control or that needs to be controlled in something, in a way that we can't help them with, we'll even point them to their local county extension agent or something like that to find out, what's working best for that other problem if we don't have an answer.
Wow, it's seriously so custom. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that you get a satellite view of their property too. That's so helpful because, you can follow directions as best you can, but to really have somebody walk you through exactly how to manage your property is amazing.
Yes. And we find it's really helpful even in the summer if someone calls because they are having fly problems, because it's amazing, especially those of us who live rurally, what we see around us is maybe not is what actually around us when you look at a satellite map, and maybe there is a cow farm a quarter mile away, but there's woods in between you and you've never seen those cows. You don't go down that road. So it's kind of things like that. We can sometimes find some of those other things and recommend, maybe putting a trap just in that location, see if flies are filling up there. Oh, well, flies are filling up in that trap, but not the one on the other side. So must be coming from this source. And we can say then, okay, take these kind of traps, focus them right there so that we get those flies before they come across. So those satellite, being able to kind of look at it on a satellite map, even though, you know, it may not always be the most updated satellite map. Sometimes, you know, you'll get a split half winter, half summer screen, but when we're talking to the customers, then it's a lot easier for us to say, okay, what's over in this corner or what's changed here, and just get a really good overall view of their property, what they're doing, you know, and asking them about what they've done for fly control in the past as well. One of the big things that we see, and it's something that I also did personally right up until I went to graduate school, those odor traps, the traps that you put water and have bad smell in them, hanging them right in the barn because they fill up fast and it makes us feel good. Those odor traps are actually attractant traps. They draw flies from a distance. So you can actually, by putting those traps more than, you know, if they're not at least 100 feet away from a barn, they can actually make a fly problem feel worse because it's drawing flies in from a wide area, and it also attracts some flies like flesh flies and blowflies that aren't even a bother most of the time until you put up one of those traps that then starts attracting them. So it's a lot of things like that. We go over a lot with our customers. I know it feels sometimes they're like, what, how does all this matter? But then they see, you know, as we're going through, we're like, okay, well, it's because it's this fly. We think it's breeding. This is where it likes to breed. What kind of habitats are you seeing that have that? What's changed in the environment? Anything like that, we can get a lot of questions, can get us a lot of detail to help everyone come up with what's right for their farm, their location, their animals, their setup, and what they have in time.
Yeah, that's incredible. So if a listener is interested in any of the products or services offered by Spalding, how do they get involved?
The best thing to do, our website at spaldinglabs.com is a great place to start, but also giving us a call at 888-562-4552. We are open from Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Pacific time. I had to think on that. And then pretty shortly we'll be opening them up for Saturdays as well. And you'll always, like I said, you'll always get a US-based fly control expert. Most people have been here for many years and have worked like this. We work really well together. So if there's something that one agent can't handle, they'll definitely pull me or someone else in and get the answers that we need, because we really want to make sure that our customers are getting a good fly control experience and that everything is going right, because the best thing we can do is have, you know, repeat customers, and we still have some of the same customers that started with us over 40 years ago. And so that's really our big thing. We can get fly control for everyone with the right set of kind of tools and circumstances, and we'll work with them as much as we can to get them the best control possible for their area.
Definitely. Well, and I love that you hinted at the 40 years, because Spalding Labs has been around for quite a while. And it looks like you started working for Spalding Labs straight out of grad school.
I did.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's like, I think it's 12 years, right?
Yep.
That's amazing.
It was really how I got here. This worked out really well for me. I am an only child on a farming family. So I wanted to be able to live close to home, and livestock entomology is what I've always loved. I loved insects and I love being around livestock, and being able to help, especially in my area, watching some of the smaller family farms go under was really hard. And I wanted what I did to be something that could be used to make better economical decisions and help those farms where maybe they couldn't before. So my graduate research actually was looking at fly predators and bedding choice and how those two things interact as for dairy heifers when they're raising them. So choosing what kind of bedding is going to produce the fewest amount of flies, what kind of bedding works best with the parasitoids. Is it going to be better to pay more for this bedding type or pay less for a bedding type and be able to get fly predators? kind of helping those farms make those kind of decisions that can save them money and result in far fewer flies, happier, animals all around. So my advisor was friends with the entomologist that was on staff with Spalding prior to me, and the college was using them, and he had come out for a visit, and I still hadn't quite nailed down what I was going to do for my thesis work. And he's like, well, think on these. And so I kind of came up with my thesis work on where I thought it would be useful and kind of went from there. So then as soon as I finished, Dr. Clymer was looking to retire, and they offered me the job straight out of grad school, and I jumped at it because it meant I could work from home, so I could be near my family farm and still do everything that I love, and visit all kinds of farms all over the place and do kind of everything that I love all in one place.
That's amazing. Just all the right steps just totally fell into place. That's incredible.
Yep. It was very, very fortunate set of circumstances that really did land me 100% in my absolute dream job.
That's really cool. So what is your typical day like as the company entomologist?
It varies kind of by the time of year. So most of the time, like through the summer, well, really all year I do some quality control. So like I'll have shipments sent periodically to my house where I can then measure exactly how many are hatching, because we guarantee, live shipments all the time and a good hatch rate. So I'll check and see how many are hatching, make sure that the quantity we list on the bag is the quantity that we're sending. So yes, I actually sit and count 5,000 to 10,000 of those out in a sitting, just to verify that we're within that range. And then other aspects that just make the product work better. We want to check that our species mix is doing well, because we know what species work well, which don't. We want to make sure we don't get any contamination. And then the females of the fly predators do the much bigger load as far as keeping down flies and doing the work. So we make sure that we always have a high female ratio to males, so that we're giving really good quality product. Other than that, then I also do just try to keep up with any new research coming out, anything that might suggest we should either change or add to the kinds of plans and suggestions we give to customers. I do a lot of the outreach things kind of like this, as well as talking to like 4-H clubs and, ag offices and any group that just wants some information on fly control. And then other than that, mainly just kind of helping customers, helping identify hard fly problems or different things that are coming about, and just making sure that that our agents know what they need to ask and that sort of thing. And then making sure we've got really good customer education materials for our customers to be able to get the best that they need out of it.
Sounds like never a dull moment. You are busy.
No, yes. Because then, we also do trade shows in the spring. So I travel a lot for those. I do field research. So during the time of the year when there's flies going about, like for our bye-bye insects, I will usually do a test, like a field trial on it every couple of years to make sure that the efficacy stays good, that we're not having any kind of problems, with mixing it or anything like that, as well as shelf life and making sure that we're staying with a high efficacy within the time frame that we say it will. So in the spring, usually from like February to June, I'll conduct some of those tests as well, and then try to visit customers. If we're not doing field testing, I'll kind of travel the country and pick out some customers to visit, or if there's people having particularly hard problems, stuff like that. So yeah, always, never a dull moment, always going, always running, but it's perfect and I absolutely love it.
That's really awesome. So I know we've talked a lot about the current products that Spalding Labs offers, but is there anything new on the horizon that listeners should keep an eye out for?
Right now, we don't have anything under huge development. We are still looking. Our bye-bye insects, the one issue we find with it is that one of the products that makes it last longer also causes staining on like white and gray hair. So we are still trying to find something that is not a heavy chemical that we can replace that with and get a little better. So that is something we're still actively searching and hoping to find. And then Other than that, we don't have a lot of products necessarily on the market, but like I said, we do keep a very close eye on the research going on in these kind of topics with IPM and parasitoids and all of that to make sure that we're always evolving and staying with, where the solid science tells us we can get good fly control by doing these things. Maybe one more thing I'd like to say kind of about our bye-bye odor in particular is because it does do such a great job of reducing ammonia, for anyone that travels a lot, or even just if you have an enclosed barn, like I'm in Illinois, we don't have the nice mare motels that, Florida does. So in the winter, ammonia can get high for us, both if we're trailering horses or in our stalls. So we do lean pretty heavily on that to keep those ammonia levels down to make sure we don't end up with any kind of respiratory issues with our horses, either when we're trailering in the hot summer or have them cooped up in stalls in the winter.
Thanks for tuning in. Learn more about the Ask Annie podcast by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Ask Annie Podcast. Have a suggestion for a product you'd like me to use in an upcoming episode? Email me at askanniepodcast@gmail.com or leave a comment on any of our social media pages. Find even more Ask Annie episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. The Ask Annie podcast is a production of Equine Podcast Network, an entity of Equine Network, LLC.